20 years ago, some colleagues and I were sitting in an office. We're business professors, and we're talking about what it takes to be a successful business. We were talking about the essence of success and what causes success. And the more we talked about it, the more we realized the thing that causes business success more than anything else are relationships. Relationships between businesses, between employees and bosses, between companies and customers, between suppliers and companies. It was relationships that happen to be the essence that drives company performance, efficiency, effectiveness. And the more we talked, we decided we've got to understand what these relationships are and what really drives these relationships. We talked about the relationships. We came to the conclusion that the essence of relationships is trust. It's trust. We got quite excited. We thought, oh man, that's the essence of all relationships. We've got to find out what this trust thing is. And we started reading literature. We started looking up what is trust. And what we found was a mess. There was no clear definition of trust. It was used in a myriad of different ways and defined in a myriad of different ways. We didn't understand trust. Now, as researchers, that got us kind of excited. There's an area that we can really research. But we found that people said, I trust you. I trust you. What does that mean? We didn't know. We didn't know. So we began to investigate what trust really is. And we decided we'd start by looking at world leaders, some of the most influential leaders in world history. Obviously, if you're an influential world leader, you must be trusted. Rankit.com on the internet ranked world leaders, the most influential leaders of all time. Alexander the Great was ranked as number 1. It's amazing that Napoleon is ranked number 3, ahead of George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Winston Churchill. Amazingly, Adolf Hitler is ranked number 17, ahead of Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin. How does that reflect on trust? What does that mean for trust? Does that mean that Hitler is more trusted than Abraham Lincoln? What is trust and what drives trust? In fact, we started looking at companies, and Entrepreneur.com lists the most trusted brands, the most trusted companies. And these are some of the most trusted brands. And many of these we use. This means we trust Nike. We trust Coca-Cola. We trust Southwest Airlines. How do you know when you trust Southwest Airlines with your luggage, they're not going to lose it? How do you know when you pick up that next can of Coke, it's not going to make you sick? How do you know when you open up a license agreement from Apple? This is amazing. I talk about trust all over the world. And I've asked over and over again, how many of you read the license agreement before you agree? This is a license agreement for iTunes. It's 229 pages. And I'm not going to even ask how many have read it, because most of us just agree to it. We don't know what we've agreed to, but we've agreed to it. Why? Because we can trust Apple. We can trust them. So what is trust? Trust is a willingness to be vulnerable. You choose to take risk and be vulnerable to the other party. That means if I say I trust you, it means I'm willing to be vulnerable to you. I'm willing to take that risk. It's vulnerability and risk that drive trust. So how does this work? Let me start with a story. My fiance and I were driving in Wyoming, in Jackson City, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And we looked up on the mountain, and there was a ski resort. And people were jumping off the mountain and paragliding off the mountain. These are the Tetons. These aren't little guys. These are real mountains. And we looked up there and thought, should we? Should we? And we thought, let's give it a shot. And we drove over there. All right. And we go up to the business and say, all right, tell us about paragliding. First person we saw was this guy right here. John. John comes up and basically says, I'm going to take you. We're going to jump off the mountain together. Now, you don't have any time. You've got to make a snap judgment. And there were, my fiance and I, we looked at this guy and says, we really want to take that risk? Do we really want to be vulnerable to this guy? I got a little sidebar here. When I prepared this TED Talk, I had to get his image, get his permission to use the image in this TED Talk. He had to take a risk in me. It was fun. I turned the tables. Not a lot different than jumping off a mountain. So, and so the bottom line is here we are, and we had to look at John. Do we trust him? We're trusting him with our lives. We're going to jump off a mountain with this guy. Am I willing to be vulnerable to him? What drives my willingness to take a risk in John? Well, the first thing that drives trust is something called propensity. A propensity to trust, a propensity to take on that vulnerability and risk. Everybody is born with a propensity to take risk. It's driven by geography, it's driven by family, it's driven by upbringing, it's driven by society. Edelman Trust Barometer is on the internet. And they went around the world and they found different levels of trust throughout the world. The red areas on the map are areas that don't have as good trust as the blue areas. And so is it all driven by our upbringing? Is it all driven by our family? Well, I can tell you no, because a family came up while my fiance and I were talking to John. And it was amazing. Here they were from the same town, from the same home, the same family. And some members of the family said, no way, I'm not going to jump off that mountain. Other members of the family said, let's do this thing. So we know it's more than propensity. We know it's more than propensity. It's more than just that innate willingness to trust and take risks that we're born with. What we found in our research are there are three major drivers to trust. Three drivers, three reasons we trust. And the amazing thing is, it's our perception of that company. It's our perception of that other person that drives these drivers. The first of the three drivers is ability. Can that person do what they say they can do? Are they able to perform what they say they can perform? Do they have that ability? All right, there's John. All right, there he is. Does he have the ability? Well, he comes out and he's wearing that black helmet, kind of unshaven. He's got that jump off the mountain look. And I got to tell you, I looked at him and I thought, you know, if he were wearing a pink helmet or a yellow helmet, I wouldn't believe it. But he's wearing a black helmet. He's got the swagger. He looks like he's jumped off a mountain before. And I said to him, John, have you done this before? He says, yeah. He says, I've done it for 20 years. And I says, any deaths in that time? Any broken bones? And he said, no, 20 years, safe. Oh, John's got the ability. He's got the ability. And I began to believe in John. Now, here's something funny about ability. It's situation specific. Would I trust John to fix the engine in my car? John doesn't look like a guy that could fix my engine. I wouldn't trust John to fix the engine in my car. He could jump off a mountain. He had that ability. So ability is not generalizable. It's specific to the thing that you're trusting them to do. I would trust John to jump off a mountain, not fix my car. Okay? Ability. I will trust them if they can do what they say they will do. Okay? If they're able to do it. The second driver is benevolence. Do they care about me? Now here's John. I know he can jump off the mountain, but man, I'm telling you what, I saw those paragliders coming down and they were corkscrewing down, and I saw some pretty dang green people after they got off the mountain, and I knew John could cause me a lot of discomfort. You know, we'd survive, but I might not wish I'd survived. And so, does John care about me? Does John care? And it was interesting because we talked to him, and I began to feel like, yeah, we began to connect a little bit. We began to connect, and John, I felt like, cared about me. Now, here's the interesting thing here. If they care about me, it's not driven by their ego, okay? They don't care about me for their own gratification. They really care about me. And if they really care about me, I'm more apt to trust. A couple examples here of people that were known for their caring. Abraham Lincoln once said, "To ease another's heartache is to forget one's own." He cared about people. A contemporary of Abraham Lincoln was Walt Whitman. And in their writings, they kind of blended each other's names very often in their writings. And Walt Whitman once said, "You know, Abraham Lincoln is my man, but more importantly, I am Abraham Lincoln's man." He believed in the benevolence of Abraham Lincoln. And people that followed Abraham Lincoln did so. Yeah, he had ability, but they cared. They sensed that Abraham Lincoln cared about them. The amazing thing is, if it's all I have is ability and no benevolence, I'm an assassin. Assassins have lots of ability and they don't really care. Abraham Lincoln cared. Want an example of an assassin? Caligula. Caligula, raised by his uncle. His uncle wanted two people to share the emperor role in Rome. The first thing Caligula did was kill his cousin, kill the competition so that he was the sole leader. He drained the national treasury. One time he was in the Colosseum, and they ran out of criminals to put with the lions. So he just grabbed some spectators and put them down there as well. He was not a man with a lot of benevolence. People feared him. As a result, you couldn't trust him. You couldn't trust him. Ability and benevolence drive your willingness to take risks. But there's one more factor. That factor is integrity. Integrity is having a set of values that other people agree with. You live by those values, and other people agree with those values. Now let's go back to Adolf Hitler. If you know the history of Adolf Hitler in the 1930s served a little time in jail. And while he was in jail, he wrote a book called Mein Kampf, My Struggle. In that book, Adolf Hitler laid out his values, his belief system. Now, most of us wouldn't agree with those values and that belief system. Believe me, that book was a bestseller in Nazi Germany. And there were people that believed in his values. They believed he had integrity. And believe me, Adolf, he lived his values. We wouldn't believe in his values, and so we wouldn't trust Hitler. But there were people that did. Integrity means I have a set of values, I live those values, and you trust me because of those values, and you believe in those values. In other words, if you say you're going to be there, you're going to be there. If you say you're going to be honest, you're honest. If you say you're going to be trustworthy, courteous, you will be, and you agree with it. Not driven by ego, it's real. 3 factors then drive trust. Thomas More was known for his integrity. He was known for his integrity. He once said, "We speak of principles, but if the weather turns nasty, you up your anchor and move to where the weather is more calm and the fishing is better." Thomas More lived his principles. If you go to the Tower of London, there's a small church in the back corner, and Thomas More's body is in the floor of that church somewhere. He stood up against the King of England because he didn't agree with the King of England. And while everybody else changed their values to match the king, Thomas More did not. He stood by his values. He gave his life for his values and his principles. Thomas More was a guy you could believe. He lived his values. Thomas More could be trusted because he lived his values. The bottom line, 3 factors. 3 factors drive trust. Yeah, there's John again. I'm not finished with him. 3 factors drive trust: ability, benevolence, and integrity. And it's your perception. It's your perception. And there's John, and there I am. Am I going to jump from the mountain? Am I going to jump from the mountain? Unconsciously, I'm thinking ability, benevolence, and integrity. Did I jump? Yeah, I jumped. I jumped. Yeah, it was great. I survived. I don't know that I'd have jumped if I couldn't believe him. If I wouldn't have believed him, if I wouldn't have trusted him, I don't know whether I could have jumped. As importantly, my fiance jumped. We jumped together. And it was phenomenal. If you want to improve your relationships, if you want to reduce your friction, if you want to improve people's perception of your trustworthiness, build their perception of your ability, benevolence, and integrity. And you will build trust. And believe me, we will have a happier society. Thank you.